Welcome to Difficult Conversation Africa broadcast. I present to you the host, Yinka Olaito.
Growth doesn't just happen by chance. It is driven by vision, intentional planning, and the ability to adapt. So, how can leaders identify the right opportunities, align their teams, and build strategy that don't just look good on paper, but actually deliver results? These are some of the things that we will be discussing today. In today's episode, we will be diving deep into one of the most important responsibilities leaders face in building the right strategy for sustainable growth. My guest today is Bob Bradley, a business coach, a business leader, a business facilitator who guides business leaders in strategy and growth. Welcome to the show, Bob Bradley.
Hello, delighted to be here. Looking forward to speaking to you.
All right, thank you. I'm impressed by the work you do. Being a business coach and business leader, I have followed your thought for some time, and I'm so impressed that you are bringing the changes our world needs, and that's why I felt like having this conversation today with you so that you can help us unpack some of the challenges business leaders face, especially with regards to how they can actually build a strategy for sustainable growth. So I go to the issue that we're going to discuss, Bob. Bob, when you talk about big pictures in your field, what does the right strategy for growth mean for leaders today?
Yeah, interesting question. And I think the first thing I'd say, the key challenge for many leaders is actually having a strategy. One of the things I've observed is that many business leaders, as they start their business, are really entrepreneurial. They're very good at grabbing business opportunities, grabbing revenues and deals whenever they can. And that's great. And they are very good managers at making things happen. But if you continue doing that as the business scales, you don't build a core competence, you don't build a reputation. And so the first thing I would say is the challenge is for them to stop being quite so entrepreneurial and grabbing every opportunity that comes, and to focus more on what are we really, really good at, and to develop a strategy that is going to help them become a known name in what they're good at.
That's fantastic. For them, for leaders to excel, you mean that they need to pay attention to what they're good at and those areas of their strength, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it both means if you understand what you're good at, firstly, you can invest in developing the competence amongst your team to do that even more, even better. But secondly, you build a brand and a reputation. You know, any big company, any big brand that you see on the high street, you have an association with that brand. You know what they do, that you know what they're there for. And I think it's important for a small business, as it begins to scale up and transitions to a slightly larger business, to focus in on what is special about that business and who is the special market they work with, the target market.
And that drives us to issue of visions and direction. And Bob, I need you to unpack this for us. The challenges, vision and direction. In the area of vision and direction, how can leaders balance having long-term vision and responding to the short-time pressures that they face in their daily work?
I wish I had a simple magic answer, because it's difficult. You know, a leader has to be able to deal with the short-term pressures that the business needs, whilst also keeping a view of the long term, as you say. So the best tip I can give is to make sure you reserve time during which you can focus on things that are important and not urgent. It's something that I learned to call A time. You block in your diary 2 hours when you know you're going to be productive, and during those 2 hours, you turn off emails, you turn off any distractions, and you focus on doing things that are important to the long-term success of your business, but not necessarily urgent. and it's about reserving time for those. You've got to be ruthless in saying, I can't spend all day reacting to immediate pressures. I have to take some time out to look at where we're going to be next month and next year, and not just what do I need to do today. So I guess another way of looking at that is saying being clear on the priorities. One of the tips that I would strongly give is that you sit down at the beginning of the day or at the end of the previous day and think through, what are the 3 things I really need to get done today? What are the top 3 things? There's some people even say you should just think about one thing. And if you can do one strategic thing every day, then you'll move your business forward.
In the area of strategy, Bob, I know that's where you have your major strength with leadership and organizational growth. What are the critical elements that what are the ingredients and critical elements that every growth strategy must include to succeed?
The key elements of strategy, I think, are 2 things. One is being very clear on your own market, your specialist market that you're focused on. The mistake many businesses make is to try to be everything to everybody. And, if you've got a market of 50 million people, that's very difficult to address. You don't, as a small to medium business, you don't need 50 million customers. You probably only need 500 customers. Maybe even only need 50 customers. So this focus on a market for whom you can be special. That's challenge 1, is working out what your market is, who you're really valuable to. Challenge 2 is working out and being clear about how you help them be more successful, how you help them succeed, how you help them deal with their challenges, their problems, how you make them feel better, succeed more. And I use the word feel deliberately because very often in today's world, the real differentiator is with the organization that the supplier that can make the client feel good about having bought their service. So it's those 2 sides of the coin. It's the who are the people that we can be very special for, and what do we do for them that makes them feel special, feel more successful, be more successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think now one of the things that one of the the vital issues that you raised, Bob, is the clarity. That it is very important that there be clarity of what they are trying to achieve with it. And I think that's really a point that many are, I'm afraid, many leaders do not get right. And I think that I'm sure that this will be a point they need to pay attention to in their daily activities in building critical mass for a successful and sustainable strategy and growth. Then we look at the next question, which is really important for me. In decision making, how can leaders know which growth opportunity to pursue and which one to actually let go? And I think this is also important for many leaders. They are faced with many choices. They are faced with many challenges, and there are opportunities in the market. How in your own experience, how can they make the best decision in the pursuit of the right application of strategy and processes to follow?
Yeah, I totally agree. The challenge in strategy is very often for the entrepreneurial business leader that's built a business up. The challenge for them is often understanding what they don't do and being clear on what they don't do, because their temptation is always to take opportunities. And if you read up on strategy, almost everybody says key to strategy is not obviously is what you do, but it's even more so what you don't do. And one of the ways I think of this is to think of a dartboard or an archery board or archery target, and in the center of the target is the bullseye. And that bullseye is your marketing. This is what we're trying to be. This is the perfect business for us. We work with this market to do this thing. This is the perfect business. You then have around that an additional part of the dartboard where you still score points. You may not score as much as you do on the bullseye, but you still score points. And in the business metaphor there, this is business that we do, even if we don't promote ourselves doing it on the website. So you might be, so for example, let's use me as an example. My bullseye is to facilitate meetings of business leaders, to run meetings of business leaders. That's my bullseye. But because I try and do that, I also come across people who say, could you speak for us? Could you do a podcast for us in this case? Could you do some business coaching? This sort of thing. And those are all on the dartboard. They all fit around what I do, so I accept that work. But if somebody comes along and says, could you fix my car for me? I'll say, no. I can fix my own car, but I'm not in business to fix cars, even though I could do it. So I turn away that opportunity. So I see it as sort of 3 layers on a dartboard. You've got the bullseye. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're marketing ourselves as. That's what we most want to do. We've got a surround that we do if somebody offers it to us. And we've got off the dartboard things we don't do because that's not our business. Does that make sense? Does that help people?
I think so. I think to clarity and focus, knowing what you are good at and pursuing that. So we look at the people factor in strategy and growth, which is also important. Strategy may fail without the people. So my question to you, Bob, is this. How important is team alignment in executing a growth strategy, and how can leader achieve this?
I think the the answer to the first one. It's really important, but that's why you go on to excuse me. You go on to sorry. That's the reason you go on to the second half of the question, as to how do you align the team. Again, like most things in leadership, there are no simple magic answers, but there are some pointers I can give you. And I think there are 2 main responsibilities for a leader. A leader needs to have a vision of where they're going, a direction of travel. This is where we're heading. And people follow a leader when they feel that person knows where they're going. So the first thing is for the leader to understand for themselves, what is the vision? What is the direction? Where are we going? The second half is then for that leader to display consistent behaviors in how they head in that direction. And what I mean by that is the ethics, the values, the culture, that the people know where they stand. They know what the leader stands for. They know what the leader feels important. They know how the leader's going to react. So for me, the important things in getting the team aligned is to have a vision and have a consistency in how you manage them and how you manage the culture.
Thank you, Bob. I like a point that you raised, which has to do with role modeling, because people are watching, followers are watching, and therefore leaders has to be a role model for whatever he or she is trying to drive at, and it's really important. We look at the next one, which has to do with adaptability. We know that the dynamics in the environment are changing every day, and therefore there may not be a very static way of doing things because of the evolving environment. So the question is about adaptability in a rapidly changing environment. How can leaders keep their growth strategy flexible yet very effective?
Another great question. There's a guy called Nassim Nicholas Taleb that I follow that I find really interesting. He's a bit geeky and a bit academic, but he talks about how the world is not a consequence of predictable events. The world as we know it today is a consequence of the unpredictable events, what he calls the black swans. So I think it's really important for businesses and business leaders today to build agility into what they do, to build flexibility. And now, how do you do that? Well, I think it's by focusing more on building capability developing skills, developing ability to deal with anything, whatever happens, and developing that, rather than putting together very fixed plans saying we do this, we do this, we do this. The idea of having a 5-year plan nowadays, I'm not saying you shouldn't have an outline of where you want to be in 5 years, but don't bother with the detail, because you can virtually guarantee that your 5-year plan will be completely out of date in 6 months' time. So, have a direction of travel, know what it is you're trying to achieve as outcomes, develop the skills to be able to do things that are going to help those outcomes, but don't tie yourself in knots with, I'm going to do this tomorrow, this the day after, this the day after that, because the world keeps changing, as you say. So you've got to build the capability, build the skills in people. That means they can do what they need to do, whatever happens.
And that's really insightful. Let's talk, Bob. Let's talk about innovation and risk. What role should innovation and risk taking play in growth and strategy?
Very neat follow-on question, because it is, it's implicit in what I'm saying, that you've got to be able to be flexible, and you've got to be able to be innovative, and you've got to be able to take risks. I think I'd answer this almost upside down, actually. I think one of the biggest problems many businesses have is perfectionism. The organization and the people in it, whilst I am very keen on quality, quality does not necessarily mean perfectionism. The perfect product that's delivered too late and is too expensive is not a great product for anybody. It's important to have the product people need when they need it at the price they can afford. So to make that happen, you have to be innovative. You have to accept a degree of risk in what you're doing. You have to do it and then learn and improve. You see this happening all the time, particularly with software products, where it's very irritating. I agree when the software product doesn't work perfectly, but if it does the job and you have to work around 1 or 2 hiccups, then it's still worth having over not having it. One of the phrases I use to illustrate this, again, is an archery phrase, is ready, fire, aim. Ready, know what it is you're trying to do, where you're trying to get to. Fire the dart, fire the arrow, fire the bullet, see where it goes, and then make an adjustment to try and hit the bullseye. So ready, fire, arm, it's aim. It's about doing it and learning from that experience, rather than trying to invent the perfect product first time.
And I like that one, that you have to be ready and fire. Those are important what that leaders need to be able to use and be comfortable with. Now, let's look at metrics, because metric is also important, which has to do with measurement. If you're looking at sustainable growth, you must really have a metric that you use and all of that. Yes, people do say that it is not all about figures, it's about impact. But I think that to build a sustainable growth strategy, you must have a way of measuring your impact. And that's the next question that I'm asking Bob. What metric or indicator should leader use to measure their sustainable growth progress?
Yeah, another good question. You see, the problem I think many people have is that they are driven by the accounts. And accounts are important and critical, but they look backwards. They look at what's already happened. They look at the financial results rather than what's going to happen in the future. So I think whilst you should have financial accounts, it's very dangerous for leaders to spend too long looking backwards at what's happened. You need KPIs, as you would call it, key performance indicators looking forward. That's what you're hinting at. And for me, there's no single KPI that applies to everybody, but the most useful KPI I find in most businesses is what I call the order book. The order book is all the orders you've taken but you haven't yet delivered. Now, for me, in many ways, that's the future health of the business, because if you've got lots of orders waiting to be delivered, you know that you've got a business, you know that you've got income you could generate when you deliver it. If you've got too many orders, then that might be a problem because customers are going to get fed up with waiting. And if you haven't got enough orders, you know you've got a problem to get more. So for me, the most important KPI in any business is the order book. That's the sort of balance between how quickly are you taking new orders, how quickly you're filling up the order book, versus how quickly you're delivering it. So the goal should always be, obviously, to fill it up more quickly and then empty it more quickly. So you're trying to get the sales team and the marketing team to generate more new business, and at the same time trying to get the operations team to deliver that business more quickly. So that's the number one, I would say, most important metric or indicator I would look for. The second comment I'd make is I would look for indicators through the whole life cycle of a customer. Now, what do I mean by the life cycle of customer? Well, a customer starts never having heard of you. Then the customer hears of you, if you're doing good marketing. Then they engage with you and say, oh, I'm interested in your products. Then they inquire and say, can I, how much will one of these cost? And you put a proposal to them, maybe, depends on the business, obviously, and then you sell them something. Then you deliver it to them. You make sure they're satisfied with it, and hopefully they come back and buy another one. So there's a life cycle there of a customer, and that for me gives you a great suggestion as to what indicators you need, because you need to try and track customers through that life cycle. So a good measure would be to say, how many customers have engaged with us this week? How many have inquired with us this week? How many proposals have we sent out this week? How many sales have we achieved this week? How many have we shipped this week? How many customers have, how satisfied are our customers from a satisfaction survey? And how many repeat customers have we got? So there's a sequence. The individual numbers will vary by business, but I would encourage every business leader to think about their business as that customer life cycle and measure how customers are moving through that cycle, how quickly and how effectively.
Thank you, Bob. In rounding up, there are pitfalls. Leaders are not immune against mistakes and pitfalls. So, for you as an individual, as a business leader and a coach and facilitator, my question is: what are the common pitfalls and mistakes that you have seen leaders make in their drive to ensure business strategy growth?
Most common mistakes. I think the most common mistake is actually comes out as an emotional, that I meet lots of business leaders who say, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do anything. My staff, I have to keep bailing my staff out. I have to keep doing things for all my staff. And they're so busy doing things, they don't have time to invest in developing their people. So I would suggest that's the most common mistake, is to feel that their success is a result of doing stuff. And that happens because in a startup, of course, that is exactly what drives success, is, how good are you doing things yourself? But as you scale, as you get bigger, you've got to be able to enable other people to do things. And so it's about delegating effectively. Delegate. And by the way, a tip for delegation, lots of people say I have difficulty delegating. For me, the simple answer to that is delegate the outcome, delegate the results, not the activity. If you do that, it takes less time because the outcome is easier to delegate usually, rather than describing exactly how to do it. Secondly, it allows the individual that you've delegated to work out the best way of doing it for themselves, and that helps their motivation as well. So I would say the most common mistake is not delegating well, and as a consequence of not delegating well, ending up drowning in doing everything yourself. When I think the job of the leader, catchphrase I like is, the role of the leader is to look after the team so that the team look after the business. The leader is not there to do the business themselves as you scale up. The leader is there to look after the team so that the team looks after the business.
Thank you, Bob. And I like the final conclusion that you put out very strongly. The job of a leader is to look out for the team while the team look out for business. It's really important that people and leaders understand this. So in this conversation, Bob Bradley, a business coach, business facilitator, and who help leaders and empower them to build a successful and sustainable business growth, has helped to unpack some of the questions that most of us as leaders always are afraid to face. And that's the essence of Difficult Conversation podcast, where we raise issues many are afraid to raise and all of that. Thank you, Bob Bradley, for coming on the show today. And thank you, our listener, for being here today. It's a privilege to always have you. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please don't forget to also subscribe to our newsletter on the podcast website, which is www.difficultconversationafrica.org. See you in the next edition. And thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. For inquiry, please send an email to info@difficultconversationafrica.org. Telephone 0809 591. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Difficult Conversation Africa. See you soon.